A woman with a clipboard stormed over and ordered him to move his boat, loud, proud, and absolutely convinced she was in charge. What she didn't know, the man she was yelling at owned the whole lake, and her fishing club's days were over. It was just after 7 a.m. when Clarence Rucker backed his truck into the gravel lot at Mayfield Lake. Just outside Springfield, Missouri, the sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the water was smooth, untouched. Clarence, 47, had been looking forward to this for weeks. He'd spent most of last night getting his old, polished aluminum fishing boat ready for this exact moment. Quiet, peaceful. Just him, a thermos of hot coffee, and the lake his father used to take him to as a kid. He was just loosening the trailer hitch when he heard quick, crunching footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw her, mid-50s, short blonde hair, sunglasses already propped on her head. Despite the early hour, she gripped a clipboard like it was a badge of power and wore a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You can't park that here," she snapped. Clarence blinked. "I'm sorry." She stepped closer. "This lot is private, for community use only. You need to move that boat." Clarence set his wrench down on the trailer hitch and stood. "Morning. You live around here?" "I'm on the HOA board," she said, as if that meant something. "And you're not on the list of approved lake users, Mayfield Hills Fishing Club only. You're trespassing." He glanced past her toward the lake. No one else was there. Just him. "Didn't see a sign?" "There's one by the pavilion," she said flatly. "You must have missed it." Clarence gave a small nod. "I've fished here plenty. Never had an issue." "Well, you've got one now," she snapped, tapping her pen against the clipboard. "Either move your boat, or I call it in." Clarence took a slow breath, keeping his voice calm. "What's your name?" "Teresa Holcomb," she said, standing taller like he should recognize it. "And yours?" "Clarence Rucker." She scribbled something. "That boat registered to you?" "It is." "Well, Clarence," she said, voice dripping with smugness, "I'm sure you just don't know the rules, but you can't show up and drop your boat wherever you want. We've had problems before. People leaving trash, breaking things. This area's for residents and their supervised guests." He watched her. There was something in the way she said, "people," that rubbed him wrong. He didn't say it out loud, but he felt it, the way she looked at him like she'd already decided who he was. "I'm not breaking anything," he said. "Just here to enjoy the water." "You need to leave. Now." A long pause. Clarence looked down at the gravel, then back at the lake. Finally, he turned to her. "You sure you want to push this?" She blinked. "Excuse me?" "Might want to double-check your info," he said evenly. "Think you're mistaken about who owns this lake." Teresa actually laughed, sharp, shrill. "That's supposed to scare me. You know how long I've lived here?" Clarence didn't flinch. "You know who bought this lake 3 years ago, who maintains it, pays taxes on it, who allowed your fishing club to use it in the first place?" For a split second, her face flickered, just a hint of doubt. But it vanished fast. "You're bluffing," she spat. Clarence walked back to his trailer and clipped the line back onto the boat. "All right, do what you gotta do." "I will," she hissed. "You'll hear from the board." But Clarence wasn't bluffing, and Teresa had just picked a fight she wasn't ready for. By 9 a.m., Clarence was already on the water, drifting near the reeds on the lake's east side. He cast his line, unhurried, not even really expecting to catch much. The air was cool, the water calm, but his peace didn't last. A white golf cart rolled up near the dock. Even from a distance, Clarence recognized her. Same stiff posture, same quick steps. Teresa Holcomb. This time, she wasn't alone. A man in a windbreaker, a radio clipped to his belt, sat beside her, probably some HOA security guy. They stopped at the dock's edge. Teresa planted her feet like she was about to deliver a verdict. "Clarence Rucker," she shouted across the water. Final warning. Clarence reeled in his line, turned his chair, and waved. Morning again, Teresa. I've called the sheriff's office, she barked. You're violating HOA rules. Leave, now. The man beside her looked uneasy. He leaned in, whispering something, but Teresa cut him off with a sharp shake of her head. Clarence stayed seated, calm, hands folded in his lap. That guy with you, he got a badge, or just a walkie? Teresa stiffened. You don't need to worry about that, Clarence called back. Well, if you're going to accuse someone of trespassing on private land, you might want to make sure you're not the one trespassing first. The security guard, young, maybe mid-20s, finally stepped forward. Sir, can I ask what your business is on the lake? Clarence nodded. You can ask. I'm fishing. Are you a resident of Mayfield Hills? No. Then I'm going to have to ask you to come ashore. Clarence pulled his tackle box closer, but didn't stand. You ever hear of Crescent Holdings? The young man hesitated. Can't say I have. Figures, Clarence said. They're a private trust. Bought this land and the lake 3 years ago, owned and managed by them. I'm the sole trustee. Teresa scoffed. Oh, what? You expect us to believe that? Clarence smiled. Don't really care what you believe. The paperwork's filed with the Greene County Recorder's Office. Public record. You can look it up right now. The security guy glanced at Teresa, then back at Clarence. You got ID on you? In the truck? I'll need to see it. Clarence didn't move. I'll show it to a deputy when they get here. That's who you called, right? The guard shifted uncomfortably. Teresa, though, doubled down. This lake has been part of our community for decades, she snapped. Just because some shell company buys the land doesn't mean you can roll in here, act like you own it, and disrupt our peace. Clarence kept his voice steady. Ma'am, I didn't disrupt anything. You came to me. Her face flushed. You know what? Fine, let's let the sheriff sort it out, but don't expect sympathy when they show up. Clarence leaned back in his chair, casting another line. Not looking for sympathy, just some peace and quiet. But Teresa couldn't let it go, because this wasn't just about a boat. It was about control, and hers was slipping. By the time Clarence packed up and drove home that afternoon, the sun was beating down hard. The silence in his truck was a welcome relief. The old leather seats creaked as he sank back, exhaling slowly. He wasn't angry, not yet. But something stirred in him, not bitterness, not resentment, just a quiet reminder of what this lake meant, and why he was there. His house sat 10 minutes away, tucked off County Road 102, modest, single-story, pale green with fading white trim, the kind of house built for living, not showing off. His dog, Jasper, barked once from the porch as Clarence pulled in. Clarence waved but didn't linger outside. Inside, he kicked off his boots, tossed his keys on the hook, and grabbed an old framed photo from the shelf. Faded edges, a crease down the middle. His father stood barefoot by the lake, holding up a fish, grinning like he'd won the lottery. Clarence, no older than 10, grinned back in grass-stained jeans and crooked teeth. Dad, he muttered. You'd have handled her a lot better than I did. He poured himself iced tea and sat at the kitchen table, unmoving, replaying the look on Teresa's face, the certainty in her voice, the way she'd scribbled his name like he was some trespasser with bad intentions. She hadn't cared who he was, hadn't asked, just assumed. Clarence stood, walked to the filing cabinet, and slid open the bottom drawer. Inside, a blue folder labeled Mayfield Lake, title and access. He laid it on the table and flipped it open. There it was. Deed transfer from the previous owners. Signatures from Crescent Holdings. His name as trustee. The HOA agreement. Granting the fishing club conditional access, renewable annually, subject to review. No renewal had been filed in the last 10 months. Clarence chuckled dryly. Guess they forgot who they were dealing with. The lake wasn't public. Never had been. The old owners had allowed access out of generosity. Clarence's father, before he died, had helped build that understanding, believed people should share nature as long as they respected it. But after Clarence inherited the trust, the same folks who'd once shaken his father's hand had grown distant. A few waves, no real effort to know him. Except Teresa. Teresa had never even looked at him. He scanned the paperwork again. No loopholes, no technicalities. The access was a courtesy, not a right. And he had every legal standing to revoke it. Still, Clarence didn't act on impulse. That wasn't his way. He wanted to give the benefit of the doubt, but this wasn't just about one rude woman. It was bigger, about entitlement, about respect. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in a while. "Hey, Mr. Lang," he said, when the voice answered. "Yeah, I know it's been a minute. Listen, I need a favor. Can you pull up the HOA agreement from 3 years ago? Specifically the fishing access clause?" A pause. "Yeah, I've got the physical copy, but I want to double-check a few things with you." Another pause. "No rush. But yeah, it's time I take a closer look at who's been taking advantage of what my father left behind." As Clarence hung up, he had no idea how deep the entitlement ran in that neighborhood, or how loud it would get when someone finally said no. Early Monday morning, Clarence stopped by the Greene County Recorder's office. He didn't need to, he already had the documents at home, but something told him this time he needed everything official, clean, bulletproof. He stood at the counter while the clerk pulled up the property records. A few clicks later, the screen lit up with his name, the lake's legal description, and a scanned copy of the deed. Black and white. The lake, the dock, the entire surrounding greenbelt, all his, held under the Crescent Holdings Trust. No overlapping claims, no shared easements, no community ownership. "Looks like everything's in order," the clerk said with a polite smile. Clarence nodded. "That's what I needed." Back in his truck, he took a deep breath. This wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about respect. Teresa Holcomb hadn't just questioned his right to be there. She'd looked him in the eye and decided he didn't belong. And no matter how calm he'd stayed, her tone had made one thing clear. This wasn't about rules. It was about power. At home, Clarence opened his laptop and drafted a letter. Director, professional, to the point. Addressed to the Mayfield Hills HOA board. Cited the original access agreement terms, noted no renewal had been filed this year, stated public access to the lake was suspended immediately. No anger, no threats, just facts backed by scanned copies of the contract, the deed, and his trustee paperwork. He printed it, sealed it in an envelope, and drove straight to the HOA office, a beige single-story building behind the subdivision gates. The parking lot was empty except for 2 cars. Inside, he handed the envelope to the receptionist without explanation. "Do you want a receipt?" she asked, startled. Clarence met her eyes. "Just make sure Teresa gets it." That evening, he sat on his porch with Jasper at his feet, watching the sunset paint the trees gold. For the first time in days, he felt a flicker of peace. "I appreciate that," Billy said, shaking his head. "She even told my wife last year our porch furniture didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. Can you believe that?" He laughed bitterly. "A chair's a chair. You either sit on it or you don't." Clarence cracked a smile. "I'll keep that in mind." That wasn't the only encounter. At the post office, someone left an unsigned note in Clarence's P.O. box. She doesn't speak for everyone. At the gas station, a middle-aged woman waved at him, then quickly looked away when he didn't wave back. People were testing the waters, feeling him out. But not everyone was playing nice. That afternoon, someone slid a flyer into his mailbox. No stamp, no envelope. Printed in bold letters. "Local man revokes community lake. Access, retaliation, or power grab." Clarence stood on his porch reading it with a slow shake of his head. The flyer accused him of weaponizing his position, calling his actions disruptive and unnecessary. No name, no contact, but he didn't need a detective to guess who'd written it. Later, walking Jasper by the lake, he passed a couple fishing near the shore. They didn't speak, just watched him. Back home, Clarence sat on his porch, watching the sunset. He hadn't wanted a fight, hadn't started one. But the neighborhood was making it clear they didn't like being reminded that access was a privilege, not a right. The next morning, his phone rang again. A young woman named Andrea Preston, new to the HOA board after a wave of resignations. "I just want to apologize," she said. "I wasn't there Saturday, but I heard what happened. Teresa doesn't speak for everyone. Frankly, some of us are embarrassed." Clarence kept his voice calm. "Good to know." "There's talk of an emergency board meeting," Andrea continued. "Some want to reverse your decision. Others think we should negotiate a new agreement." "I'm not interested in negotiating," Clarence said. "I'm interested in respect." A pause. Understood. But Clarence knew better. This wouldn't end with polite phone calls. Some folks wouldn't let go without a scene. And that scene was coming fast. By Friday, the HOA office buzzed, not with energy, but with tension thick enough to choke on. Inside the meeting room, beige walls, mismatched chairs, Teresa Holcomb stood at the head of the table, arms folded, lips pressed tight. Ron Castile rubbed his temples. "We all read the letter. Like it or not, Clarence is within his rights." Don Keeling, an older member, shifted in his seat. "So we just let him lock us out? Like we're trespassers?" "He's making a point," Teresa snapped. "No," Andrea cut in. "He's asking for respect, and after last weekend he's not out of line." Teresa whirled on her. "Are you taking his side?" Andrea didn't flinch. "I'm looking at facts. The agreement expired. We didn't renew it. That's on us. That lake's been part of this community for decades." Teresa's voice rose. "Families fish there, kids swim there. He can't just cut everyone off because his feelings got hurt." Ron sighed. "This didn't start over feelings. It started because you accused the man of trespassing on his own land." Silence. Meanwhile, Clarence stood on the dock, clipboard in hand. Not patrolling, just taking inventory. Broken fencing. Trash piled near the shore. 2 benches by the fire pit, splintered and unusable. All things the HOA was supposed to maintain. All ignored for over a year. A truck slowed behind him. Billy Waller leaned out the window. "You sure you want to poke this hornet's nest?" Clarence didn't look up. "I didn't poke anything. I just stopped letting people stomp through my yard without asking." Billy chuckled. That afternoon, a formal notice hit every mailbox, bulletin board, and inbox in Mayfield Hills, effective immediately. Access to Mayfield Lake is suspended pending review. Residents are asked not to use the dock, shoreline, or greenbelt areas. Violations may result in trespass enforcement. The reaction was swift. A woman in her 60s stormed the HOA office demanding answers. Teens argued with parents near the trailhead. Online forums exploded with rumors. One even claimed Clarence was selling the lake to a developer. No one could say where that hut came from. That night, Andrea Preston knocked on Clarence's porch. "Would you speak at the meeting?" He raised an eyebrow. "To say what?" "Whatever you think they need to hear." She met his gaze. "They don't know you. They just know Teresa's version." Clarence nodded. "All right, I'll come." And the community hall was packed. Chairs scraped. Neighbors lined the walls. Even the doorway was clogged with onlookers. Clarence stood at the front. No podium, no notes, just jeans, a button-up, and a calm stare. Teresa sat front and center, arms locked, jaw set. Ron spoke first. "We're here to discuss lake access. Clarence has agreed to speak. Let's keep this respectful." Clarence stepped forward. Silence fell. "My father taught me to fish on this lake when I was 10. he began. "Before this neighborhood existed, we'd cook on the shore, skip rocks at sunset." A few murmurs, heads tilted. "I bought this lake to honor him, kept it open, no fees, no conditions, just asked folks to treat it right." He paused. "But when someone threatens to call the cops on you, on your own land, that's not about rules, that's about respect, ain't he?" A woman in the back spoke up. "She didn't know who you were." Clarence looked at her. "She didn't ask." No one argued. Clarence continued, his voice steady. "This isn't about punishing the community, it's about accountability. You've been using something that doesn't belong to you, without maintaining it, without renewing the agreement, and without even thinking about who's behind it." He stepped back, not wanting to dominate the conversation. "I didn't want it to come to this, but I won't apologize for asking to be treated like a person." That last sentence landed harder than he expected. A few people lowered their eyes. One woman whispered urgently to her husband. Then Teresa stood. "Why didn't you just come to us first?" Her voice was tight. "Why go straight to shutting everyone out?" Clarence met her gaze without blinking. "You came to me first, remember? On the dock, with your clipboard and your threats." Her mouth opened, then closed. She sat down, slowly. Ron stepped forward. "We'll open discussion now. No shouting. Keep it constructive." Hands shot up. An older man in a fishing hat spoke first. "I don't care who owns what. That lake is part of this neighborhood's life. Kids have grown up there." "Then maybe," Clarence replied evenly, "the neighborhood should care enough to respect the person who's kept it open all this time." Another woman asked, "Would you consider renewing the agreement if the HOA handled maintenance and set real guidelines?" Clarence paused, feeling the weight in the room. They weren't just angry anymore, they were listening. "I'll consider it. But I'm not rushing. Not until I know people understand this isn't just land, it's personal." As the meeting wound down, Clarence realized something important. Respect couldn't be demanded, it had to be earned. And he'd just made them all face how little they'd offered. The following days were strangely quiet. No more flyers in his mailbox, no anonymous calls, no teenagers sneaking fishing trips. The lake that had caused so much noise now reflected only trees and sky. Clarence didn't expect an apology from Teresa Holcomb, and he didn't get one, but she stepped back. No more accusations, no more standoffs. Rumor had it she'd resigned from the HOA board to focus on personal matters. Everyone knew why. On Saturday morning, Clarence returned to the dock with a toolbox and paint. Jasper trotted beside him, tail wagging. The benches were still broken, the fencing still loose, but he wasn't bitter. He wanted to fix it, not for the neighborhood, but for himself, for his father. As he replaced a rotted plank, footsteps approached behind him. "Need a hand?" Andrea Preston stood there in jeans and sneakers, sleeves rolled up, holding a bag of screws and a cordless drill. Clarence nodded toward the bench. "You know how to work that thing?" "I do," she grinned. "You wouldn't believe how much HOA paperwork I've fixed with this drill." He chuckled and motioned to the bench. "Be my guest." They worked in comfortable silence. After 20 minutes, Andrea finally spoke. "A lot of people want to make things right." Clarence didn't look up. "Takes more than good intentions." "I know. That's why the new board's drafting a revised agreement. Maintenance schedules, cleanup rotations, proper oversight." He paused. "No more clipboards and threats?" "No more," she promised. "Any issues will be handled internally. You won't be bothered." Clarence nodded slowly. "I'll read it when it's ready." Later that afternoon, another surprise. Billy Waller returned with his teenage grandson Lucas, who carried a trash bag and gloves. "Figured we'd help out," Billy said. "Might not fix everything, but it's a start." Clarence handed the boy a rake and pointed toward the trail where broken glass had collected. By sundown, the dock looked new. The benches were solid. The path was cleared. And for the first time since this began, Clarence felt something shift. Not just in the space around him, but in the people too. At church the next morning, a woman whispered, "That lake is lucky to have you." In the parking lot, a man he didn't know approached. "My kid caught his first fish there last summer. Never got to thank you for keeping it open." The thanks weren't necessary, but they mattered, because they came unprompted. A week later, Clarence stood alone at the lake's edge at sunrise, holding the revised agreement in a plastic folder. This time, it included clear maintenance schedules, a 3-strike littering policy, mandatory annual renewals, an orientation for all fishing club members, not to control but to remind people of the lake's history and what it stood for. As he signed the agreement at the clubhouse, Andrea said, "We're going to do better." "I'll hold you to that," Clarence replied. On his way out, a lanky teenager in an oversized fishing hat stopped him. "Mr. Rucker? My dad said you fixed the dock, said I should thank you." "Just take care of it," Clarence said with a small smile. "We will," the boy promised quickly. Walking to his truck, Clarence felt a quiet peace settle in his chest, not from winning, but from being understood, even just a little. He thought back to that first confrontation with Teresa, to how quickly she'd judged him. He hadn't yelled or fought fire with fire. He'd let the truth speak for itself. And in the end, that was enough. The lake had taught him something. Sometimes the strongest way to earn respect isn't to demand it, but to stand firm with dignity and let others come to you. Because when you stand your ground quietly, the right people will eventually hear you.